to Talking Supply Chain. In each episode, top supply chain industry professionals and the nation's top thought leaders join host Brian Strait and share their unique insights to help supply chain managers stay one step ahead of their competition. This is Talking Supply Chain. Hello, and welcome to this episode of Talking Supply Chain. I am your host, Brian Strait, and I'm being joined today by Emily Gallo, Senior Vice President of OptiFreight Logistics. Welcome, Emily. It's great to have you with us today.
Hi, Brian. Thanks for having me.
Great. Our topic today is being a supply chain watchdog. And I know some people out there thinking, watchdog, oh, that's what these whistleblowers do. And that's not what we're talking about here. What we are talking about, though, is how to be a good steward of the supply chain and how to stay on top of what is happening within your supply chain through technology and modernized tracking. And we'll get to that with Emily in a few minutes, and we'll talk a little bit about what she means by watchdog on that. But to get started, I want to give our audience a chance to learn a little bit about Emily. So, Emily, if you don't mind, could you share a little about your career journey and how you landed at OptiFreight Logistics?
Thanks, Brian. Yeah, I have had a variety of roles over the last 20 plus years, but most recently have really enjoyed serving as SVP GM for OptiFreight Logistics, part of Cardinal Health, for the last 3 years and almost a decade with Cardinal Health in a number of roles over some of our medical product businesses and came in more of an enterprise strategy capacity. I think there's a lot of value in trying different things, bringing different perspectives, and really had the chance early on in consulting, both US and abroad. Moved into a healthcare focused MBA, which allowed for perspectives on payer, provider, industry, and then really enjoyed some roles in sales and marketing with Merck and Abbott prior to making the move to Cardinal.
Great. We want to get into some of that in a minute. I want to ask you just a little bit. I think people hear OptiFreight Logistics, well, you're part of Cardinal Health, so you're the logistics arm for Cardinal Health, right? Can you give us a little background on OptiFreight Logistics? I know that's not exact what you guys do entirely. So who is OptiFreight and what do you guys actually do?
OptiFreight is a tech forward organization. It's a standalone company within Cardinal Health. And what we do is focus on all of those packages that come in and out of a healthcare site, whether that's a hospital or a pharmacy or a lab, surgery center, even to the patient's home. We do it with a combination of technology and people. And our focus is to bring visibility, drive value, and greater control of those packages. Now, the broader Cardinal Health is very much known for being a prime distributor. But what we manage is everything outside of that, which actually is a large portion of what our healthcare providers experience on a day to day basis. So our focus is from a scale managing more than 21 million annual packages at this point across 25,000 shipping locations. And we do so side by side with the customer to make them more confident in the decisions they're making, to find value month after month, year after year.
Yep. And you mentioned some of the things that leads to my next question. You've got a long, you mentioned you've got a long kind of history here in healthcare. You've been around it a little bit. Some of the common challenges that you've seen over the time, what kind of things have you seen, especially when it comes to the logistics side of this equation? And then how have those kind of changed over time? And I'm guessing that COVID probably played a big role in how some of this may have changed.
You're right. COVID definitely shone a light on some of the, I'll say, vulnerabilities that
Yeah.
existed across pretty much every type of supply chain, but certainly within healthcare. I think that the challenges that even outside of the large disruptions that we saw come down to, it's not a lack of data, because any healthcare provider has a lot of data and generates a lot of data every day. It's more so how the complex and fragmented systems turn that data into insights or don't. And that's where we see healthcare being a more complex industry. That gets in the way of having everyone have a full line of sight, have visibility to know where to focus. I would say concurrently to that, labor shortages, right? Which is, yes, it's in the clinical space. It's certainly in the supply chain space as well. So when you have data that may not be driving decisions, in that capacity, and you have not enough people or being asked to do more with less all the time, you have even less time and resources to drill in to make decisions and take action. So the more you can understand what good looks like, what areas are worth putting time and energy against to drive results, that's going to overcome some of the challenges that we see.
Yeah, and you touched on several things in there. I think that we'll probably get into a couple of those things a little more in deep detail in a little bit. Um, I mentioned in the beginning, though, we were talking about supply chain watchdog, and as I mentioned in the opening, that this is not what I think a lot of people when hear the word watchdog tend to think of, which is somebody blowing the whistle on a company or somebody really paying attention to a company, looking for things that they may be doing wrong. That's not what we're talking about when you talk about a supply chain watchdog. So can we start by defining that term and how you guys view that and how you view what a supply chain watchdog really is, from logistics to supply chain standpoint?
A watchdog, to your point, can mean a lot of different things. In this instance, because we sit at the intersection of so many of the key stakeholders. So let me share a little bit more about OptiFreight or just, companies like us.
Yeah.
We have relationships, understanding, and connectivity to many of the key stakeholders that make healthcare supply chain run. That means the national carriers, right? FedEx, the companies out there that physically move shipments from one place to the next. We have relationships and connections with the suppliers or the manufacturers that are producing these products and wanting them to be in the hands of healthcare providers. And then, of course, the healthcare providers themselves and the patients they care for. So it's because we sit in this unique spot, it allows us, and we're proud of having the ability to be a watchdog in the sense of seeing where things are connected, where they might not be working as optimally as possible, being able to be a conduit and advocate on behalf of our customers, healthcare providers, to make sure that they are receiving the service and the performance that they need for their freight management or shipping. And then importantly, from a data perspective, we also then are uniquely positioned to have line of sight, be able to see from historical data and now more so from a predictive standpoint, how can we anticipate where things may be disrupted or take the proactive precautions to make sure that if it means a service lens that we are making the right decisions, we're helping our customers make the right decisions.
Yeah. The one of the things that I found fascinating about healthcare supply chains as I've talked to people is the fact that y- while Amazon can tell me where a pen is that I've ordered, right?
Hmm.
That's not always traditionally been the case in the healthcare supply chain, and I've found that fascinating given the types of products that often move in it. I mean, some of those products are life saving products that need to be there at a certain time. They may be medicines, they may be other products, right, that are maybe not so time sensitive. But given the types of products that are moving through this supply chain, can you talk a little bit about why maybe the healthcare supply chain has been a little slower to adopt visibility and tracking and some of the other technologies that other supply chains have been so readily jumping into?
Yes, we've seen improvement, I will say, but we still have a long way to go compared to
Yeah,
some of the other industries, the consumer product space. Part of it does relate to PHI around patient information, the confidentiality of it, and how that information, rightly so, has to be tightly regulated.
yeah.
It when you get into systems that have that information and you're more so overlaying the supply chain piece, things can move at a bit of a slower pace just to make sure that the regulations are in place.
Mhm.
We are seeing that from a tracking and a real-time visibility standpoint, we are making improvements, and I say we as in the industry at whole.
Yeah.
We know that whether it's chip related, right? Ways of seeing in a courier or a carrier at any given moment where a package is. We are moving in that direction. It's just taking us a while longer. And then when we think about what information healthcare providers need at their fingertips to to see, oh, what is not coming in as anticipated? Is that product needed for a surgery that's taking place later that morning? Um, the ways that they can have line of sight, get alerted in a more proactive way. We're making strides. It's just we're naturally so starting from well behind the other industries.
Yeah. You mentioned patient privacy, which obviously is a big thing. And so is that one of the biggest drivers here, or is that create an obstacle? I should say is probably my question, right? Does the privacy create an obstacle, or is it a matter of just getting the technology in place to um, what's make so that people don't know what that product is that's moving, and it just becomes a box, right? A box X as opposed to a box of something.
Yeah. It's it is a challenge, it is a barrier. It is not the only barrier. I think what
Yeah.
makes it a little bit more thorny is that when we look across the different stakeholders in the healthcare ecosystem, right? Healthcare insurers, patients, healthcare providers, manufacturers, you name it, the systems that they're using to talk to one another is important. You got to have the right data defined in the right way, a consistent way. And I think where PHI comes in, it adds a layer of complexity because as those systems talk to one another, they've got to account for the fact that they either want and have the authority to have PHI be part of that exchange, or they actually have to go out of their way to make sure that that's not part of it. So it adds a layer of complexity, but it's really the fragmented systems across the stakeholders that's the biggest issue.
Okay. And PHI, for clarity, is that patient health information?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So, given these challenges, obviously the need to modernize the healthcare supply chain is there, right? And that, I mean, that's what OptiFreight is working to do, right? I mean, you're trying to modernize this. So, how do we go about getting started to modernize this? I know it's kind of started, but how do we accelerate that transformation, if you will?
Yeah, it's fun to think about what the little incremental steps can make a big difference, as well as thinking about the future, AI and the next frontier that we're in. From a little standpoint, I want to talk a bit about benchmarking and going
Mhm.
back to what good looks like because it's simpler said than done. So
Yeah.
think about a health system that is a large, say, Midwest health system that has uh, 15 different departments within that health system. You've got the embedded pharmacy, you've got the lab, you've got other wings that they're running their service lines through. And as you can imagine, when you think about the shipments coming in and being sent from those departments, they're all pretty unique. So that health system trying to understand, okay, as a health system, how should we be looking at what good looks like? And I'll give you another example of what a KPI or a key performance indicator would be for shipping for our customers when a higher level of service is not required based on what the product is or when it needs to arrive, then naturally you want to go with a more economical mode of transport, right? So what percent of total shipments would represent that more standard mode? Well, if that health system in the Midwest is trying to understand, okay, we've got X percent of that standard mode. Is that good? How do I compare? It's not a matter of just looking at other broader health systems, but actually drilling into the different departments within that health system so they can see, oh, wow, okay, so our lab is actually at or above what good looks like. That's the gold standard, which we can help inform because we view customers across the nation, right? So maybe they say, all right, my lab is doing quite well, but it's actually, my pharmacy or another department where do we really need priority overnight as, X percent of our shipments, or is there movement that we can do to be more in line with other like departments? So that it's just a simple example, but if you actually can apply data to drive what good looks like at the level of specificity that drives action, and with that, combined bandwidth of where do we focus in and make it efficient, that's excellent. If I think about
So,
the next, oh, I was going to
oh,
talk about,
go right ahead. Go right ahead.
okay. So getting into probably the cooler part of the conversation is when we think about and I'll say the future of technology, but it's here, right?
Yep.
AI, and I actually had a chance late last week to attend a conference. I'm part of a women's leadership group. It's called the Trustees Council of Penn Women, and we look at ways that we can advocate for students, for staff, for faculty, alumni, and we have thought leadership panels that take place. And I had the opportunity to listen in to both the professor at Wharton that is now a key professor in a newly created major around AI, right? Instead of
Yep.
fighting it, they're embracing it and making it an enabler, as well as a senior leader from the Gates Foundation, thinking about what AI can do and how do you power it up. And I will say that across the themes that were discussed, there's so much excitement around what AI can help execute on. It's equally as important to make sure, from a people, process, leadership perspective, that you've got the right underpinnings to
Yeah.
maximize the impact of it. So I would just say, as AI comes more and more in the healthcare space, just being really thoughtful in how we're wrapping around that the ways that we ultimately need to deliver on patient care, and having the right leaders be enabled or accelerated by it, not that it's replacing the decision making at hand.
Yep. And I want to we'll follow up with AI technology in a second. I want to go back to something you said that I'm just curious about, and you talked about like shipments, which shipments maybe need be priority, which ones can be standard, etc. The complexity to do that, I don't know how complex that actually is in a healthcare environment versus, so you separate, out the different shipments versus just simply saying, I'm just going to ship everything priority because it's simple, it's easy. Yes, we're going to pay a little more for shipping, but the extra costs for me to manage this maybe isn't worth it. Is that extra cost actually worth it?
Yes, I would say we are seeing freight management, which is kind of the common term, or shipping management, to take more of a center stage now than it has in the past. So, Brian, to your
Mhm.
point, I think there might have been notions in years past where it's the juice isn't worth the squeeze, right?
Right.
That we just need to do it. We need to do it simply. And then as healthcare systems and pharmacies really understood the value that could be had by especially working with organizations like OptiFreight in uncovering what value, what savings and cost savings they could eliminate by using the right data to make the right decisions to optimize their shipments. The good news is, just because they may now be sending a mix of different types of packages, the technology and platforms that we use make it really easy to do it. So it doesn't add complexity. It's just a matter of getting the program in place,
Yeah.
working to understand where there are opportunities. And it does come down to the trade off of how, if you're in a tissue and blood lab, for example, right, you're not going to be choosing a lower mode to send samples, right? So it's really understanding the decision criteria, but making it still as simple as possible, that once you get it going, it can find value and it still can be as efficient.
Yeah. Okay. So, and obviously all of that is data technology, and you talked a little bit about AI there in the last answer. I wanted to ask you about just the technologies in general that you see that are useful. Um, I think this is a question that companies always have when they institute any technology, right? Is it, can I use it as is, or do I need to customize it?
Yeah. Yeah, we are, I would say, excited about both of those things in a way that no healthcare provider is exactly the same.
Hmm.
And at the same time, there's tremendous value in finding things off the shelf, right, that could work. Here's what we've seen. When a healthcare provider may have it in their mind to say, well, I can just go out and buy this thing, and I've been told, that this is a set it and forget it type of a platform or a technology. And if they do decide to move in that direction, what we've seen time and again is that while it may be exciting to see what efficiencies they can come up with. What we see is that because healthcare is ever changing, that set it and forget it never actually works. So there is a component of any product or service or offering that we have with our customers that absolutely takes into account who they are,
Mhm.
how their systems operate, not just from a technology standpoint, but from different sister hospitals and the ways that what their strategic priorities are, and how do we kind of work alongside them as an extension of their team to take what is sophisticated technology but make sure that it works on day one and is relevant, 12 months later when they've gone out and acquired three hospitals or, have
Yeah.
taken on this new ERP transformation. So it's really making sure you've got the right mix of both.
Yeah, and I don't know about what you're seeing nationally. You mentioned adding three hospitals right to the system. I mean, we're seeing that. I'm in the Northeast, and we are seeing that with hospital systems adding hospitals and networks all over the place, right, and consolidating.
Hmm.
I'm thinking that that is making this job a little, forward thinking, right? If you as you try to implement this, these technologies, that if you think that your company at some point is going to be adding more, you've got to make sure that what you're putting in can easily adapt to that and scale.
Exactly.
Yeah. Um, I think the other big question with technology, and you touched on this at the very beginning, you talked about how OptiFreight you leverage technology and people, right? And I think the concern with technology is always that we're going to eliminate jobs. So for logistics companies, especially in this healthcare space, that are looking at adding tech, how do they balance that tech while leveraging the humans at the same time? In other words, what role are humans going to continue to play in this job?
Humans are at the center of OptiFreight. We're excited that that's what sets us apart in the
Mhm.
marketplace, and that's always going to be the case. I think when we look at the ways that be it AI or just technology advancements are going, it naturally will take some of the more repeatable manual work out of the process that we have. It doesn't mean it takes the people out of that process. And what's cool is because healthcare is changing, and that we see from our lens tremendous I would say unrealized potential of healthcare providers to continue to save in this space, to continue to integrate their view of their operations as they get more expansive, like you said, complex and are actually acquiring things across the care continuum. There is so much work to be done that by using the technology to take away some of the less value add work and really gear it towards identifying, predicting where things are going and helping our customers get there even faster. We're going to need the people that understand this marketplace and have been
Yeah,
part of our team all along. So we use it as an accelerator. And I would say that our customers do the same. They're as excited as we are when we can effectively say integrate what we do into their systems so that there's just more efficient communication, and we actually can, instead of trying to identify where to act with them to drive the value.
yeah. I hear so often. It's very interesting because I hear companies. Well, we add the technology, and then they never really talk about the people. Then you find out that the company that doesn't talk about the people is the company that actually is trying to eliminate the people, right? The companies that they talk about people, they want to point out that, hey, you're getting the benefits of both of these things here. You're getting this technology, and we're going to support you. We're going to help you. You're going to get the expertise that technology, even AI at this point, still can't provide, right? But that humans
Yeah,
can. Yeah. Emily, thank you so much for your time. We're just about out of time today. So if people want to get in touch with you or touch with OptiFreight Logistics, how can they go about doing that?
I would love if they want to learn more. You can go to optifreightlogistics.com. We actually recently just launched what we're calling the Customer Knowledge Hub, and going back to those kind of best practice sharing and ways that we're looking across the country and bringing what we're seeing to bear. it's a great resource for anyone interested. And then, of course, you can always find me and engage with me on LinkedIn. I'd welcome to hear from you.
Great, great. Thank you so much. I want to thank my guest today, Emily Gallo, and all of you that took time out of your day to listen to us. We greatly appreciate it. A new episode of Talking Supply Chain comes out each Thursday. You can find it on scmr.com or wherever you get your podcasts, so be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Until next time, this is Brian Straight, and you have been listening to Talking Supply Chain. Talking Supply Chain is produced by Supply Chain Management Review and Peerless Media. You can find it on scmr.com, supplychain247.com, iTunes, Google Podcasts, or wherever you find your podcasts. For more information on this topic or to sign up for our weekly newsletter, a print or a digital subscription to our publication, visit scmr.com. We hope you will join us for our next episode. For Supply Chain Management Review, I'm Brian Straight, and thank you for listening.